everyone, Republic Jim here. I'm just on my way up to the upper acreage to do an overnight camp out. I'm planning on doing a test with the super shelter concept with my weird little bubble pop-up shelter. And as you can see, I have the sled all hooked up, got my new harness that I'm testing out for the first time. If I sound kind of winded, it's only because I am. This is the second time so far this year that I've been on snowshoes. I came up here the other day, but all I was carrying at that point was just this chest rig. This is the first time this year that I've loaded up the big sled and hauled it. And going uphill on snowshoes is definitely a little taxing. So I'm feeling it. I'm sure as the winter wears on and as I pull the sled around more, I'll get in better shape for that and won't be nearly as difficult. But right now, rough estimate, I think I have somewhere around 80 pounds in the sled, which isn't too bad at all on flat ground, but going up this long hill up to the upper property, it kind of wears me down a bit, so I have to stop and take breaks. I'm headed up that way, and yeah, there we are, kind of up there at the top of the ridge. I still have a couple more switchbacks to go, but I'm a good part of the way there. And once I get up there, I'm just going to try to quickly get my shelter set up and then start gathering a bunch of wood for a big fire, and hopefully I'll be able to get most of that done before it gets dark, because then I'll be headed back to the house and taking care of some chores there as usual and having dinner at home, and then I'll come back up sometime after 10 o'clock and get my fire going and spend the night, and we'll see how that crazy little pop-up thing works for that. But right now, I think I've rested long enough. I need to shut up and get back to dragging this thing up the hill so I can get started with all my setup. Okay, I made it up to the top. For the last steep part of the ascent, I put up the heel risers on my snowshoes, the ascenders or whatever they call them. And it was amazing how much easier that made it to pull this thing. So I might just use those even on the flat when I'm pulling a heavy sled, but I'll have to see. Anyway, up here, there's somewhere around a foot of snow on the ground, although as you can see, there's still bare patches under trees, and I could put my shelter there, but I'm going to put it in this clearing right here so that I don't have to worry about snow dropping from the trees on me and stuff. And I want to test it out just freestanding without using any ridge lines to trees or anything like that. So it's just after 3:30 now. I need to hurry up and get set up because it'll be getting dark in an hour or so. But first order of business will be to flatten out an area to set up my shelter and for my fire. So, you know, I could dig that out. I brought along my shovel, but I'm just going to stomp it down with my snowshoes, pack it down pretty good, get an area cleared like that, and then I'll get my shelter set up. So I'm gonna get to that now. just like that, the shelter is up, such as it is. Obviously the front part there could stand some support, but unfortunately this silly shelter does not come with anything for that. So it is what it is. And yeah, I'm gonna get my cot in there. I brought a heavy sheet of cardboard to unfold and lay out on the floor to hopefully smooth things out and protect the floor from ripping, because obviously I could have taken more time and stomped that snow down a little bit more or dug it out or something. It's going to have quite a bit of give under it, but I'll put my cardboard down, set up my cot, and see how that works. And then I need to get busy gathering up firewood real quick. And what I'm going to do is, I wanted to mess with a kind of an upside down fire, but the ones I've seen online, most of them, they don't make them all that big, and I don't know how long they would last. I like the idea of low maintenance, but I want something that will last for quite a few hours. So I'm going to attempt to get some larger logs and then build up from there to the smaller stuff and get that lit up tonight, and we'll see how that works out. Anyway, that's all for now. I'm gonna get to it. So I finally got all my firewood gathered up and got stuff sitting around the shelter and my cot inside there. I'm getting ready to head back down to the house. I'll be back later and get the rest of my smaller stuff and try and get a fire going there. Now, this is all stuff I just drug out of the snow and brushed off, or dead stuff that was sticking up in the air. So not the best, but I'll get some other stuff and some birch bark and some fine stuff and see what I can get going when I come back up here. All right, I finally made it back up here. Shelter is holding up nicely. Got some stuff in there, and I got a pile of stuff from my upside down fire, which I'm going to attempt to get started here pretty soon. So I need to get that burning and get it established, and then I can crawl into bed. But of course, knowing that when a fire dies down, a super shelter is basically just an enclosure, but it's not especially warm at that point. I have poncho and liner on the cot right now, and then I also have a decent 3-season down sleeping bag, and I'm dressed warmly. I ditched the cotton stuff that I was wearing earlier. Now I'm wearing stuff that's appropriate for cold weather and snow, all synthetics and wool. And naturally the forecast said it was going to be calm wind tonight, and I get up here and the wind is gusting pretty good, but at least I guessed relatively right on the direction of setup anyway. It should be blowing smoke parallel to my shelter instead of towards it, hopefully. So we'll see how that works out. But it's just very lightly snowing right now. Can't really see it on camera, I guess, but just very fine little flakes drifting around in the wind. And they're saying that it's supposed to get down to about 25 degrees tonight, but given how far off they were regarding the wind, I'm not going to count on anything. We'll just see how the temperature plays out. I did put a thermometer over here away from my site so that I can check and see where we're at. And yeah, I don't think they're too accurate on that 25 degree low, but 20 degrees and the wind chill, it's going to get kind of nasty, so I'm going to stop all my blathering, try and get this fire going, and then retreat to the shelter, get a little bit more of my gear inside, whatever I can cram in there, and the rest I'll cover up and leave underneath the tree. But anyways, that's all for the moment. Well, that's it for tonight. I'm calling it at this point and going to bed because it's about 1:45. I'm exhausted. Unfortunately, due to circumstances that were out of my control and things that I had to deal with at home, I was just too tired and didn't have enough time to really process any wood and, do things properly. So I got a fire sort of started, but it certainly isn't putting out enough flame there to be any sort of warmer for a super shelter. So I might just have to test that theory on another day, leave the shelter set up and just come back and do another overnight sometime soon. That fire will just sit there and smolder and might go out, or it might eventually take well enough that it starts burning and putting out some heat, but I'm not going to count on it right now. I'm just thankful that I did bring adequate bedding and warm clothing and such, and I'm going to be crawling into this down bag with the poncho and liner wrapped around it. Probably can't really see there, but it is about, I don't know, like 35 degrees in here, so it is better than out there, and we'll see how that goes through the night. But I've had enough for one day. I really need to get some rest, so I'm gonna pack it in and I'll check back later. Good morning. It's about 7:15, and I'd hoped to sleep longer, but woke up and I have to admit it's a little chilly in here. It's just, yeah, certainly not as warm as what I'd hoped if I'd been able to get a fire going. Oh, got a tear in the door there already. That's nice. But certainly still warmer in here than it is outside, even with the ventilation panels open. So there's not too much condensation on the plastic, but it's still a fair amount. I do like that I can see all around. That's kind of a cool feature. So, sort of like being in a tarp shelter. I'm extremely glad that I did bring warm bedding and clothing. My feet are a little chilly right now, though. I probably should have put on a second pair of socks. But be that as it may, the night wasn't bad. At one point I woke up and heard the wind blowing pretty good, and I never felt it in here. There's also a light dusting of snow overnight. So it shows that it is doable to use this thing even without a fire. But the problem I ran into yesterday was I was already very tired by the time I came up here to set up, because I'd been shoveling quite a bit of snow off of our wood pile, which was pretty physical work. And then dragging that sled up here really took a lot out of me. And then when I was setting up, I also burned a lot of energy dragging the big logs over for the fire lay. So by the time I got done getting that stuff, then it was dark and I was totally exhausted, and I never took the time or energy to process any wood and get it in a state where it would be easy to light. And I just had the stuff that I drug out of the snow, and a lot of it was wet, and smaller stuff I broke off of trees, but none of it was processed in any way. So when I came back up here, then of course it was very late and I was even more tired, and I was just trying to light the stuff and get it going. I gave it a few tries and it sputtered, and I had a small flame, but nothing that was sustainable. So, ideally I would have spent more time in splitting some wood open and feather sticking and getting stuff to where I could actually get it to take a flame and stay lit, and it would have been a much different night, I'm sure. But that was just due to the circumstances. Not much I could do about that. So I'll probably just leave the shelter set up and the main part of the fire lay, and maybe come back on a different day and process some wood when I have some daylight and some energy, and see what it'd be like to light that thing up and what kind of a burn I could get. But for now, like I said, I'm a little cold and gonna need to get up and go pee, so I might as well just get up and break out the stove and make some coffee and get this day started. Alright guys, things are looking up now. Got the coffee pot on the stove and starting to heat up. And since I'm out moving around doing things, I'm starting to warm up and generate some heat. There's a little shelter with a light on, and I had that vent panel there wide open all night, and the one on the other side is almost as open, so did okay with the condensation. Probably would have been warmer if I'd closed them, but I didn't want to have everything dripping inside there. And just to make me really feel stupid, I realized that in my extreme fatigue last night, I totally forgot that I had brought along a heated sleeping bag liner with a battery bank. So had that, I could have easily put it inside my sleeping bag and plugged it in and had a little bit of supplemental warmth. It wouldn't have been enough to make a huge difference, but it probably would have been enough to make it comfortable all night long. But one thing I did find is that I put my sleeping bag on top of the poncho and liner, so all I had over me was just that three-season sleeping bag layer, because I found it was much more important to have extra underneath me to protect me from the cold. Even though I was on the cot, I could still feel cold coming up from there. So when I had the poncho and liner underneath me, that helped out much more than having the extra layer on top of me. So even without the ground contact, it does make a difference. So there's where we're at this morning, and Looks like it's going to be an overcast day, but at least the wind died down. Everything's very calm right now. And once I have myself a little bit of coffee, that should be very nice. I think I will probably try to cut a couple of branches and process some wood and see if I can at least light a little bit of a fire just to make myself feel better about my skills. But in general, relatively soon I'm going to start packing things up. I think I have a stovetop little reflector heater type thing that I might try out with this stove inside the shelter. There's no room right now, of course, but if I fold up the cot and get it out of there, then I could set that inside there and just test it out and check with the carbon monoxide detector and see if it's getting toxic or if that's something that would actually be usable. So, still want to do a little experimentation and practice here before I call it good and pack up and head for home. But that pretty well wraps things up for the overnighter. And hopefully I will get better as the winter goes on and not get as tired out hauling the sled and improve my skills at processing firewood and those sorts of things again. So anyway, that's all for now. This has been Republic Jim. I'll talk to you later.